Hello, my name is Michael O'Keefe, aka The Movie Wizard. If you enjoy this interview and want to hear more top-notch film industry conversations, please press the thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell to stay in the know. Okay, so I'm talking to Volker Bertelmann, Oscar nominee. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. So, you're a German man, and here you are in Toronto. What are your impressions of Toronto?
Well, I was here many times in Toronto, and Toronto is a beautiful city. I played here a couple of concerts as well, and that was the first time I was in Toronto before my music made it into films. So I was mainly here to perform.
What, like in a band or?
Well, I was my own band called Hauschka. That was my artist name, and I was performing, with a prepared piano. So I put objects in the piano.
Cool.
And I did a kind of electronic music with the piano.
Oh, nice. And what was this?
That was, I think the first time I was here was in 2007.
Okay.
And it was a part of a festival. I also played at the Polish Combatant Hall in Toronto, which was a place where, they did a lot of independent festivals. And I played there with an electronic band from Germany called Neu.
Okay.
And
are you a Kraftwerk fan?
Well, Kraftwerk is from the city.
Oh wow!
I'm coming from. So Düsseldorf is.
They're legendary.
Yeah, they are. And of course, I would say I was not inspired by them, but of course I heard them a lot of times, and I think a lot of the early works from Kraftwerk are really interesting because they are very strict and sparse, and but at the same time they have a lot of power in their sounds.
They're probably part of your creative osmosis, not like direct influence, right?
No, absolutely. I would say I'm rather more in that time where Kraftwerk was very popular. I was listening to a lot of R&B at that time.
Okay, cool.
I was into more dancing and
But okay. So. Have you ever been? You said you've been in Toronto multiple times, and you've been at the festival with other movies.
Yes.
Have you ever been here with two movies?
No, no, not yet. And also, what has changed is the last two times I was here. The first time I was here with Lion,
right,
in 2017,
which you got nominated for an Oscar for.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
And that was a very nice experience because from Toronto, it was in a way the starting point of the whole buzz around the film. Then I was here, which was, I would say, a probably totally different experience because after there was the film Current War. Okay. And that was, I think that was not so received so well in the festival. So you could see the opposite side of, finding, this film has a lot of buzz and gravity, and this film doesn't get that gravity. So that was for me very interesting to see. And both films I was a co-composer with Dustin O'Halloran. So the two of us, we did the music together. The premiere for this festival is that I'm by myself with two films.
Oh wow!
And I'm the only.
You have no one to blame.
No.
Or no one to share the credit with either.
No, and it's I would say it's the last thing because Dustin and me, we are very good friends, and we really love working together. But what was interesting now is that doing all the activities by yourself is different because you always in the earlier times I was sharing it with a friend.
You had some chemistry, now it's more like
and it
interior.
was a little bit like a school class trip.
That's fun. Okay, so how would you so you did All Quiet on the Western Front and War Sailor.
Yeah.
How would you compare and contrast the scores?
Well, War Sailor, funny enough, both films are dealing with Second and First World War.
Right.
And they are really very brutal in both films. At the same time, they spread hope, and they have, specifically, I would say All Quiet on the Western Front is a very effective, but maybe also controversial way of explaining people how senseless war is in general, because it's in a way explained to you by seeing actually the disaster of fate in a way that you can't, you can be lucky all the time, but then maybe you got killed by a stone that falls off of a roof or something like that,
Right. Yeah.
So in a way it explains you a little bit, the senselessness. And the two films have a totally different sensitivity, I would say. One, All Quiet on the Western Front, is much more. It's playing a lot in the war zone, and you have a lot of scenes where they fight, and where in a way the obscureness of seeing lights over the battlefields. You think sometimes, oh, it's so beautiful, and at the same time that in this war, in the First World War, where they invented, I would say, at least a handful of weapons that were the most horrible weapons ever.
Like mustard gas and stuff.
Yeah, gas, then the tanks, that were the first time they had, like, in a big time, the use of tanks, and also all sorts of like flamethrowers, like all these things.
Horrible.
Yeah.
The trench warfare, particularly brutal.
And also the idea that the front line was never changing 4 meters to the left and to the right. It was always the same. So in a way that shows even more the absurdity, of sending young men into their catastrophe in a way. And but coming back to your question, is the music for War Sailor is much more delicate, because in that film, and of course it's also a question what the collaboration with the director is requesting. But in War Sailor we were always feeling that it needs a little bit of a kind of not sentimental approach, but that it's much more about their lives at home, and it's not so much about the brutality. It's more about the feeling that there's warmth waiting for you, and at the same time you see that the whole family slowly slips into a kind of very complicated time in their lives. And I think the more we in our times, I would say since the last 2 years, I think our lives are getting closer to areas where we can sense that it just needs maybe a little flame, and then suddenly your whole life shifts into something that was not, like every day you stand up and you're like, hey, what I'm doing today, how I spend my money and all that.
Sure.
It's sometimes it can happen that your life suddenly changes into something where you really have to act and find ways of getting out of the out of the catastrophe in a way. And so War Sailor is more delicate. And All Quiet on the Western Front has a little bit more like a very iconic theme, like one that is transformed through the whole film between like an angelic type of music, but as well as a kind of very dark, powerful, nearly like we called it sometimes like the Led Zeppelin theme, because it has a really hard, distorted sound that always comes when it's a little bit the war machine kind of.
Did you guys ever talk about Paths of Glory while you were making that movie?
No.
No. Okay. Fair enough.
No.
It's a sacred cow, I guess, and also like a million years ago. I
Right.
get it. But yeah, fair enough. All right. So I saw War Sailor. I didn't see All Quiet on the Western Front, and I found it very very beautiful, very very devastating with some of the plot developments. When you're making movies that are so like raw, emotional, there's like you're in the editing booth working with this material, seeing it over and over and over again. Does it ever get a little emotionally unsettling at times?
Oh, totally. I mean, it gets you. Specifically those films, they stick with you. And sometimes you have to switch off the picture, just because you're like, oh man, I can't see that again.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, when the boy, is on the boat. That is
really
that's very rough. But at the same time, the honesty in a film like that makes me feel very proud to be a part of a film like that, as well as for All Quiet, because they are both films that are really, they make sense in a way, and they leave you not hanging with some like lukewarm water feeling. It's that you get out of the film and you're like, oh, That's hard. Or it also brings you back to, I would say, the rudimental feelings of, of being on Earth in a way. And I think that a lot of films don't do that anymore because they follow a certain.
They want to make money and be popular.
And I would say the range of stories is a little
limited.
A little simple.
I agree. Generally speaking, there's always projects that stand out on their own.
Totally.
But I hear where you're going with that. So, which contemporary composers for film really inspire you today?
I would say I would inspiration is a little bit difficult with colleagues because because it in a way feels always a little bit like you might take their tone or their style and swallow it.
I mean more like the osmosis.
No, but I totally and that doesn't mean that I'm really feeling drawn to some composers, and some of them are friends of mine that I really appreciate, at least to know them. One is, for example, Nicholas Britell. I really love his work.
He's awesome.
I really love his work. Yeah. And he's also. I remember that we were spending a couple of times specifically in that year where I had Lion in the mix. He was nominated.
And Moonlight, right?
Yeah. He was nominated for Moonlight. And I thought that in our conversations there was a lot of similarity in the way he's thinking about music and what he likes and how he's approaching the film. So he's a guy that I definitely always look at when he's doing something new, and I listen to what he's doing, and I'm very interested. The other one is Hildur Gudnadóttir.
What did he do?
No, Hildur Gudnadóttir. She did the music for Joker.
Oh, cool!
And for she was winning.
I've heard the Joker soundtrack.
She was winning an Oscar last year. And she did also the music for Chernobyl.
Oh wow!
In the same year, and
I hear that's great. I haven't seen it.
Her and me, we did a record together at one point called Pantone. That was released a while ago, and we did a lot of shows and concerts together. So for me, that she's also a person where I'm always interested about what she creates, because I understand that there is a process behind working on a film score. Another one is Colin Stetson, for example.
Okay.
Like a contrabass saxophone player.
Nice.
And
And what has he done?
The last one, maybe. The last one, I'm not sure what his last film was, but he's a guy that really interests me in terms of his approach using one instrument, and it's not always the same. It's not always one instrument that he's using, but he's a musician in general, besides the film scores, that is interesting me. And I have to say, I love discovering, I would say, new ways. I know that there are a lot of films and a lot of jobs that I'm doing. You get requested very clear film score music. Yeah. So that is not my personal. I would say I would never release music like that on my own record. But because the approach is a completely different one. Let's say when you have a film that plays in England in 1850. Of course, you can do that with electronic music, but but at the same time, you need to find a way of not detaching it. And so, in a way, by that approach, you already push it a little bit to the side of my normal record music, I would say. And I'm very glad of splitting that. So I'm glad that I have my career as Hauschka. Where I can do whatever I want. And I can stage dive or whatever if I want to. And there is the other world of film music where I see it much more like a collaboration with a team of people.
Sounds like one's like a learning experience and the other is like a little bit more liberating. You can sort of do your thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there are people out there that are just doing only film music as they would do their own music.
Right.
But finding the projects that allow you to do that is not so easy.
Yeah, one of my questions was is there a style that you would like to try that you haven't done yet? But I guess you can just do your own thing on the side.
No, but what I haven't done yet is a pure prepared piano score.
Very nice.
Which I would love to find. Maybe the film that at the moment I'm on working on one film where I'm partly doing that, and I really appreciate the process of sound finding with an instrument where I know how things can be found, in other films I have to find instruments, I have to find players because I can't play them, and so it's a complete different process.
Okay, cool. And do you collect movie soundtracks? Do you have records and stuff like that?
No.
No?
No,
Okay.
I also have no. I'm not. I would say I'm not a record collector in the normal sense because I have a lot of records, but most of the records are exchanged records with other artists.
Okay, they give it to you.
Yeah, and I give them mine, so we exchange vinyl records, and. But I have to say, when I get, let's say, I'm on a festival and we exchange 10 or 15 records.
Yeah.
And I'm coming back and I'm starting working on my stuff. A lot of times there's no time of listening to all of them,
Sure.
And that makes me sometimes a little sad because there's there's no real time to dive into something that others are doing. And I'm trying. I'm still keeping up with that.
Yeah.
So film music was never something that I collected as a genre.
How did you transition into composing for film?
It was nearly the process was that like directors came to my concerts. And one was, for example, for Lion, Garth Davis came to the concert in Melbourne when I played there.
Nice.
And he was saying, I really like what you're doing and the transformation of sound. I think that could fit, to the first half of the film. And so I said, I'm very interested in doing that. And but and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but to be that somebody's showing interest in you, and to get the film is a very long journey.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because getting a film needs to convince a lot of other people that are not I would say that are not so in love with you as a creative,
I can relate to that. I have a screenplay that I finished in April, and I'm just shopping it around.
Yes.
So it's like just a book right now.
Yeah.
And it's a book I'm happy with, but it lives in my laptop.
Yeah.
And they convince people to read. It's tough.
Yeah, and finding supporters that are really honest with you and not like. We can take it, but I would say the first half we can cut out or things like that.
Right.
Which is, of course, it's nice that people are, listening to you, but to get into a concrete form of collaboration and working together. Yeah. And even, there are periods where you have worked together, like, let's say, for example, the music for Current War, where I was here at TIFF.
Yeah.
A few weeks later, the music was taken all off the film.
Oh God!
And they redid the whole film again.
Oh my God!
So this is happening as well. So sometimes music can or the work is following a lot of strange paths.
Great. Yeah. Okay. So, do you ever not sleep when you're composing a movie? I've heard composers say this before.
You mean that I'm not sleeping while I'm composing music, or
when you're on a certain project, it's you're so obsessed with it, you can't actually sleep at night. While you're like semi-conscious, you're just thinking about arranging things, just a note over here, a note over there. Does it ever happen to you?
No.
Good.
I can tell you, it's a little bit like I would say rock and roll is always having long parties and playing, being a certain type of person, I would say. And I have learned so far that there are people that for me are extremely rock and rollers, but that are completely the opposite of they have a very strange way of being concentrated, and they find a kind of way of getting their life balanced. I personally feel that this is for me much harder and much wilder than just letting yourself go. So in a way, when I'm working on something and I want to be really focused, I would say I rather sleep longer.
Yeah, more productive the next day.
Yes, I think the mornings for me are the most productive part.
I'm the same way as when I write. I don't want to write, like, even though I'm writing a horror movie,
right.
I don't want to do it at night. It just seems uncomfortable.
No,
I'd rather do it while I'm fresh.
Yes,
Yeah.
And the nights are there for getting, I would say, I wouldn't say hallucinations, but getting like the surreal feeling of life in a way, which I really love.
Yeah.
And I'm really love hanging out long, somewhere. But if I'm doing that, I need a rest to concentrate on, finding the essence of what I'm doing. Otherwise, I don't understand my essence. I'm losing it.
I think that's smart.
Yeah.
All right, Volker, thanks for your time. Final question. What's one piece of advice you wish you had for upcoming film composers?
Well, I think it's important to work as much as you can, and don't be frustrated about pushbacks in a way. Don't be frustrated about things where people are not taking you, because the longer you work on something and you go the circle on and on and on, someone stands somewhere in the direction of your circle and he says, now it's time for you to get the chance. And a lot of times people are jumping off the process too early. They are frustrated and they feel like they are not wanted. But if they are good and they have, I would say 50% is being patient and powerful and moving things forward. And if you can do that, I would say there's always a chance of getting a good film and starting the process.